What would actually change in your life if you believed you were allowed to be loved for who you are and not for who you're pretending to be? We will answer this question and more with the help of K-pop demon hunters. Welcome to the Fandom Portals podcast, a podcast that proves that your favorite film has something to teach you. If you want more from the movies you watch, then you are in the right place. I'm Aaron, a teacher and film fan, and today I'm joined by Brash.
Hello, everyone. I am Brash.
That he is. And this week we are looking at the harm that shame can do and the importance of authenticity in love and friendships as we dive deep into K-pop demon hunters. Through this movie and in this episode, we'll look into how vulnerability reveals connection, how being loved for who you are and not who you pretend to be, and we'll also look at how your choices and not your history define you. There's chapter headings below for you to navigate through today's conversation, guys. But before we go any further, Brash, you're going to give us a brief synopsis of K-pop demon hunters.
Guys, K-pop demon hunters is a vibrant genre blend that pairs glossy idol culture with the supernatural action, but beneath its neon colors and high energy spectacle lies a surprisingly thoughtful meditation on identity, performance, and chosen family. At its core, the film follows a globally adored K-pop girl group who live double lives, flawless idols by day, secret demon hunters by night. This duality becomes the story's emotional engine. The constant switching between stage personas and true selves mirrors the pressures of idol life itself. Where perfection is demanded, vulnerability is hidden, and authenticity is often sacrificed for survival. Fighting demons becomes more than a literal battle. It is a metaphor for confronting inner fears, self-doubt, and the expectations imposed by both fans and industry. The film's demons are not just external monsters, but symbolic manifestations of insecurity, isolation, and the cost of fame. Each character's struggle reflects the different response to pressure, repression, rebellion, or self-sacrifice, or quiet resilience. Ultimately, K-pop demon hunters is about reclaiming agency in a world that demands constant performance. It argues that strength does not come from being untouchable, but from embracing imperfection and learning on others when the burden becomes too heavy. What could have been a purely flashy concept instead becomes a heartfelt story about self-acceptance, solidarity, and the courage to be real even when the world expects you to be flawless.
I think that last line really sums this up because K-pop demon hunters to me could have been something that was a joke to watch. And I think it's said best by one of our community members through our Fandom Pulse, which we'll get into now, our community voice. Screen Hub Web says that K-pop demon hunters is so universally liked because it has a story that speaks to people from all walks of life. And the movie I expected that the least from was a movie titled K-pop Demon Hunters. So for me, I think it's just a really big surprise of 2025. And it's actually run rampant across all of the different kind of award shows, including the Billboard Hottest 100. The single Golden has just been number one for 20 weeks in a row at time of recording. It's one of the first movies to have, Korean K-pop movies to have 4 singles in the Hottest 200 in their album run. With it had Golden, Your Idol, Soda Pop, and also How It's Done simultaneously in the top 10. It's like breaking all these records, and it's the most unexpected thing that I have ever seen in my life. Brash, my partner Kalia asked me to watch this one, and at first I was resistant, as we spoke about in one of the episodes before about how I nominated this as one of my best movies of the year. But having watched it a second time, gosh, it pulled me in. Definitely pulled me in. What were your thoughts on this movie when you first watched it?
I'm a big fan of K-dramas.
Mm-hmm.
And all the like, and I saw a lot of K-drama-ishness stuff, like when the Soldier Boys first rock up.
Yep.
And it's all slow-mo. They do that a lot in Korean K-pop, where like the hot guy walks in, or the hot guy for the main character female, and it's all slow motion, and something happens. Usually a female falls over and does something clumsy or something like that. But in yours in K-drama, it's the guy who quickly, like in slow motion, swoops in and grabs her. But in this case, being a demon, he just decided to let her fall and then brush his shoulder off. No, I love K-pop demon hunters. I'm not afraid to say it. I think a lot of people do. A lot of people who won't like this movie. Well,
they're wrong, Brash. They're just wrong.
They are wrong. They are wrong. But I think there might be maybe a little less insecure, like a little less secure with themselves,
Mm.
because I think they think watching this is gonna turn them, I don't know, into some gooey person that can't have respect or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that this movie, as our very insightful viewer stated, that this movie is for everyone. Like, it can reach everyone, no matter what, no matter who you are or what you're going through. The whole point of this movie is just to say that it's okay to be true to yourself in what you like, what you do, who you are, and that there's always going to be people that you can lean on for support in the areas where you feel you're lacking.
Yeah. And areas where you feel are the ugliest for yourself is what I've got out of it as well. Because I think our two title characters in Jinu and also Rumi, they're dealing with some pretty intense feelings of shame based on their past or based on who they are heritage wise. And I think, you can look at that and look at it through one lens. But as you said, and as our viewer said, as Screen Hub Web said, you can actually look at this through multiple lenses. And I've seen it looked at and analyzed through lots of different people's perspectives before, and it works on multiple levels as well, which is really tricky to do. So it's probably one of the reasons why this movie has been streamed on Netflix over 375 million times. It is the most streamed movie on Netflix of all time at time of recording in 2025. It has won a Golden Globe for Best Animated Picture. The Oscars hasn't happened yet, but it's strongly favorited to win that as well. And I think it was the movie that nobody saw coming, to the point where, like, for me, my personal takeaway and the most valuable takeaway for me was that shame convinces us that we're unlovable as we are, but healing begins when we are allowed to show ourselves for who we are and choose to be seen anyway, which I think is pretty common take from it, from looking at these two characters.
I just want to touch on your point too, because you said it received 325 million views within its first 91 days. It makes it its most watched Netflix film. However, what surprised me most is what film it surpassed as the most viewed film on Netflix, which was Red One.
Yeah.
How? That was just my little tidbit I saw, and I was like, how is Red One the second most watched
Well,
movie on Netflix?
it's got a lot of,
I mean,
we talked about this
it does
before.
have star power. It does have star power.
Yeah, and also it
But-
comes back around every year because people watch
Yeah.
Christmas movies every year.
True.
That's why big stars
True.
do Christmas movies, because they're just like, man, I need a payday these holidays.
Easy money.
Bring it back in. Exactly. So, like, that's the thing that Red One would have that K-pop Demon Hunters doesn't, because it has that rewatchability in terms of a seasonal rewatchability. Every time Christmas comes around, people will watch Red One. Whereas K-pop Demon Hunters, you just got to be in the vibe for some music.
No, you can just, whenever you're feeling down, you can just watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
Exactly.
Whenever you're feeling like self-loathing and down on yourself, watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
Couldn't agree
Build yourself
more.
back up.
Yeah.
Sing Golden.
All right. So thank you very much to Screen Hub Web for contributing to our Fandom Pulse. If you're a person who wants to do that, make sure that you join our Discord. It's in our show notes below, and you can be read out on this podcast as well. If you know anybody that loves movies like you do, then show them their way here, and they will also find meaning through films that connects to the very heart and soul of who they are as a person. So let's touch on that MVT that we talked about here, jumping into our segment, because I think that shame plays a very big part in this movie, Brash, in terms of its two biggest characters, to the point where the title song, Golden, has a lot of informative lines. And I think it's released prior to the point where the characters actually realize themselves that they're needing some development in this area. I think when it's firstly released, it's very much aspirational to the characters, that they know that they're these people that are living two lives, and they know that they're trying to play both sides. And, one of the key lines in the song is, I'm done hiding now, I'm shining like I'm born to be. And I think that's the transition that Rumi goes through in this movie, is that she wants to be seen for who she is, for everything that she is. And she even expresses that to Celine, her adoptive mother, in the scene where she's actually asking her why she never loved her. And Celine says to her, I did love you. And I think she does. I think she genuinely cared, but she's coming from a point and a position where she's going about it the very much wrong way. And Rumi actually says, no, all of me. I want you to love all of me.
Yeah, and but I also think that's partially because of the way that, like, even the past Demon Hunters were brought up. Because if you hear how Mira and Zoe both talk, they're like, anything with the marks, dies.
Yeah.
Like steadfast, no gray area, black and white. And I think it's so ingrained in their demon hunter sort of
Culture.
club culture that even as much as she may have like loved her and cared for her, there was always that sort of demon hunter culture in her that was like also she's a demon
Yeah.
and she couldn't fully love what she was. She's like what she hopefully could be. And I think that's what with Golden too. Her line where she's saying like I'm done hiding because I think and how she lost her voice. And I don't think it was because the lines were encroaching on her or anything. I think it was because she was lying to herself in the song because she was saying that she was done hiding, but it wasn't that she was done hiding. She was hoping that once the song came out and everything was sweet and good, she would lose the lines and then she'd be fine, which
Yeah.
I think was a lie that she lied, like a lie that she created for herself to try and help her get through or help her justify it.
Absolutely. And I think that's mirrored by Jinu too, because he's told by Rumi that, once the Honmun is established and you're on this side of the Honmun, then you don't have to go back. All of the bad parts of you will be shared. And I think that's going back to what we said about how you can view this from multiple lenses. Like, I think I'm not from any sort of culture that subscribes to this, but I know that some cultures have a lot of parental pressure to perform and achieve. So you could look at it through that lens and say that that's very hard for these characters to escape. Or you could even look at it through like a homosexuality lens where, it's very hard, or it can be hard for people that experience that to show who they truly are in the culture that they've been raised in. And I think that it really speaks to multiple people on multiple levels, where it talks about that fear, that universal fear, where it says that if people knew who you really were, then they'd leave, which is what Rumi's fear is, especially in terms of her friends, in terms of Zoe and in terms of Mira, because on the surface, they look like really supportive friends that have been through so much together. But as you said, the dialogue that goes through them, they're very culturally ingrained to hate demons. And if Rumi is actually one of those demons, then obviously that message would subscribe onto her too. However, I think through the whole movie, and I think you can agree as well, if a lot of the time I was just begging Rumi herself to just tell them, because I thought that they loved her more than they hated demons, which I think was the message that Rumi eventually discovered in the end as well, when she finally came clean. Because I think for me, watching the scene where it was revealed, I feel like Mira and Zoe weren't hurt at the fact that she was a demon. They were hurt at the fact that she concealed it and lied to them about it. And yeah, that's exactly my take from it, because I think Rumi believes that her mistakes disqualify her from love, or that her heritage disqualifies her from love. But what she doesn't take into consideration is the choices of her friends in that moment.
Yeah, I do like it. 100% agree that I think it was more so the lie that tipped him over. But you could also see like sort of like the fear, like as soon as like when she yelled and like it sent out the shockwave. You could see sort of the fear, and then that's when sort of Mira pulled out her weapon, and then Zoe also hesitantly pulled out her weapons as well and pointed at her like she was just another monster that they had to fight. So and that's also, I think, the ingrained culture that they've been saturated with their entire pretty much young lives. So I think it's a bit of a two-way situation. At first, it was like the fact that she lied, but then because she is a demon and they meant to, well, she's half demon. They don't know if she was full or half, but at the time. But yeah, the fact that they pulled their weapons on her is that ingrained demon hunter culture in action. And I think the only reason why they didn't probably attack her is the fact that they are family.
And they had that history as well. But I think
Mm.
you hit the nail on the head there when you talked about fear, because in this is part of the movie as well, and throughout the entire space of the movie, fear plays a very big part, and fear and shame are very closely connected. So, for example, Rumi thinks that fear says, well, everybody thinks that fear says something bad might happen, whereas for Rumi, the shame is that bad thing is actually you. So she believes that she is the bad thing that's going to happen, and the fear of that bad thing coming to be is what her friends sort of react to. But that message is solidified in her through her self-talk. Like, she's always thought of herself and these parts of her as being not worthy to show to anybody. And when her friends sort of hold weapons up to her and point their violence towards her in that way, it sort of reinforces that negative self-talk that she's been having. And especially afterwards, where Guima actually says, you know, you've come here like this, you think you can fix the world and you can't even fix yourself. And then everyone can finally see what you truly are. And he's trying to sort of goad her in that way. And that's what Jinu says as well in terms of the demons. You know, all we have is our shame. All we do is feel and remember our shame and remember the past mistakes that we are, and we ruminate on that. And I think that's like a very dark space for people to be in mentally. But more so, I think that represents this negative self-talk that a lot of people go through as well, because it goes back to that idea where you make all these mistakes and you see yourself through this lens of not being worthy or not being lovable because of the things that you've done. But I think acceptance comes from that vulnerability, and it's extremely hard to do because most of the time people are ashamed of things that they never really want to share. But part of that sort of accountability comes from voicing that shame, and then also living through that and trusting those that you love to stick around with you. Because for me, at least, if I saw somebody who'd made a few mistakes and they were actively trying to work on it, I'd want to be around that person more than I would want to be around the person who I find out is hiding the secret and continuing to live the double life or the lie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Can end up being a very dark place to live in, which I think it really is really emphasized in this movie is like, especially with the demons, and as you said, how they are are constantly reminded of their failures and of their fears, and are stuck in this void. And I feel a lot of people have been in that same situation where they felt so weighed down with just life that they can't see a way through it. And the best thing they can do, and a lot of people don't do and should do, is lean on others and help them out. It's not a bad thing to ask for help. I know it's always thrown around a lot and sort of made to be sort of a bit of a joke, but if you're ever in sort of that sort of trouble, like reaching out is the best thing you can possibly do.
I couldn't agree more, because, you know, vulnerability reveals connection in a lot of times. And also, the moment in this movie that Rumi drops that mask when Jinu is around is the moment that it stops being like a fantasy and becomes a real sort of love story for me, especially during the song called Free, where Rumi is talking about the fact that they can just be who they are around each other. And it's so easy to talk to you because Jinu knows Rumi's secret, that she's part demon. And the funny thing about this is I feel like Rumi is embodying a really honest portrayal of that vulnerability and owning that shame and trying to be loved for exactly who she is in an honest way. Whereas he's almost telling half truths, or not really telling half truths, but he's telling a portion of the truth and leaving that little grain of secret or shame that he refuses to tell. Of course, I'm talking about the fact that he tells Rumi that his family was left behind and he got to live in the palace and was treated like a king, where in fact he made the choice to leave them behind and was treated like a king himself. So Jinu's showing these, like, he wants the benefits of this confession that you can go through, but is withholding the most important part about his healing. Like, the film repeatedly shows that the shame through what the characters don't say. So in the scene where they're actually talking about it for the first time, the animators do a brilliant job of showing Jinu's face telling those half-truths, because you can see him like halt on his words, or you can see the character like look to the left or look down when he's mentioning particular things, which obviously indicates that he's withholding some information here. But for me, between those two, I feel like Rumi's vulnerability allows her to be seen through that genuine authenticity, whereas Gino takes that little bit longer. And obviously he's been within that culture of oppression through the demon world for longer than Rumi has. And he obviously has that self-loathing embedded into his person. And you can also see him revert back to that in times of crisis too. And he says some things that he doesn't really like, that he's regretful of and remorseful of afterwards. But yeah, I think Rumi does a much better job of showing that vulnerability than Jinu does, at least initially.
Yeah, and so that, and back to my point too with between the two, her being open and then like finding Jinu to lean on and talked about things, it does free her up. She gets her voice back. Where Gino, on the other hand, he doesn't fully commit and still falls into that pit and is pulled back in.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so that emphasizes the fact that you need to, when you do ask for help, you need to be honest and you need to come out. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And I think Gino is halfway there, because in that song Free, he does mention those lyrics where he says, between imposter and the monster, I've been lost inside my head. There ain't no choices where these voices keep on pointing to no end. And he talks about how, and in the chorus, it says, we can't fix it if we don't face it. And I think, as you said, Rumi jumps into that facing it part as she's confronting her friends and telling her honest truth, whereas Gino's a little bit more reserved with the way that he sort of holds it back until the end, where he sort of allows people to see his soul, and then he gives that soul as a symbolic gesture. I feel like Rumi knows him completely, so he gives his soul to her as he's being like torn apart or whatever happens at the end there. But yeah, I think Rumi and Gino's scenes work because Rumi is emotionally honest, and there's no heroics in that moment, because there is that issue of the sort of double life that is seen here, especially through Rumi's side as the pop star, but then through Jinu's side, it's the pop star and the demon, because they have those alternate sort of modes as well.
But you even see in this, like throughout the whole movie, when the Soldier Boys come around, they don't hide from the crowds or anything. They get in amongst it. Where you see whenever any of the Huntrix go out, whenever they're out, they're always hooded up, mask on, like hiding from everyone else. And then you see at the end when they're like, time for our break, and then they're like, oh, break's over, and then they just walk out and start interacting with all the people without all the glitz and glamour, and without trying to hide themselves. And they're fully accepting themselves and allowing everyone to see them.
Yeah, and allowing fans to see them for who they are and hoping they'll like them for who they are, which they obviously do. But I also think there's a subtext there that you could dive well deeper into about how these three girls, the Huntrix pop stars, you never see them take a rest, and it's almost comically so, where they're talking about the bathhouse, and Zoe's always saying, don't let this ruin your opinion of the bathhouse, Rumi, because we have to come here and relax sometime, but they're never off the clock. So it's almost like there's that sort of subtext that you could look into as well, where that life that they're having is extremely stressful to the point where they have no time to do that inner work on themselves until they actually make it intentional. So I also think that was like another way that you could look at this film. But
yeah, like instead of working and then taking a break to try and recharge, their break is for them to just go out and be themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's very true as well. I didn't even think about it that way, because I think that them being true to themselves.
Also having to hide themselves to try and be sneakier and all the time, that'd be take its toll as well, on top of all the performing they have to do and all the interviews and everything else and red carpets, and like they make it a funny scene, but I think it's also a prominent scene too, when they talk about how Mira went to the red carpet, or what it was in the sleeping bag. But the thing is, she was completely covered up except for a tiny little hole she could see through.
Yeah.
Even when they're going out, they're still hiding themselves from, like they're hiding they're hiding parts of themselves from the audience the whole time, no matter what, which emphasizes that duality of their lifestyle of being a hunter and being a pop star. But then that's not the only duality. It's really a triangle. They've got their hunter side, they've got the pop star side, and then they've got just girls wanting to just
be girls.
And they're like, I think so. I think at the end, that part was missing the whole time, and it's just either hunters, K-pop stars. There was no time for themselves.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, they're like, we just need to be ourselves and have time for ourselves. And that's when they're like, oh, break time's over, because now we get to be us. And then they walk out into the street and just interact.
Yeah. And going back to that point we made about that duality of fame, and talking about Jinu as well, he gives up everything for fame, because he's obviously a musician on the street who then gets noticed, and then he trades all that in. He loses his grounding in his family, and he exists in this space of shame and regret immediately afterwards, where he can't really look at that anymore without feeling that vile sort of repulsion towards the decisions that he's made. And it kind of sets up that moral idea that your choices after you make a mistake matter more than your choices that you made when you made the mistake. So moving on from that, if we're looking at Jinu's actions after that, and I've always sort of compared that to the point of who you are now and the choices that you make and your intentions behind that growth and development, is it reminds us that like sometimes self-identifying as these people that are really vulnerable, it takes some courage, and reducing that armor and stripping it away is also like a really authentic act. And I think Jinu doesn't fully get there in the end, but I feel like he does end up bearing his soul, like literally, to Rumi in the end, because he even says, you gave me my soul back and now I give it to you. So he's also got that duality of that sort of pop star.
Yeah, except unfortunately for him, it was sort of ended the opposite way of how they did.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing as well. Like, he's not redeemed, I think, in this story by fixing his past. Like, he doesn't go back and fix what he did with his mother and his sister, but he is healed because he faces his past. And the resolution doesn't erase Jinu's mistakes in any way, and it doesn't erase Rumi's fear of being exposed as being part demon either, but it reframes their identity as you're not defined by your worst choice, and you're not defined by what you choose to do after that choice. And you're also not defined by what your fears are. And I think that's the important thing that you can talk to in this as well, is that I really think that Huntrick wins not because they were destined to, but because they chose each other in that moment. And a lot of the performances in the songs that they do, cinematography wise, you can see at the end when they're starting to reveal themselves to one another and they're walking along that stage towards the middle and they just pull out weapons and start fighting all these demons. You can see them like obviously fighting their own battles, literally fighting their demons to connect with one another in the middle. And then they're surrounded by this luminous light, which represents obviously the warmth of connection when they end up hugging and embracing each other once more and becoming authentic with one another. And it happens similarly when Jinu and Rumi do the song Free once again, when they sort of lift off of that platform and go into this spectral universe of bubble and light and beautiful colors. And you can see the panoramic shot of them like twirling around each other as they're coming closer and closer together, becoming more and more vulnerable. But then as that song ends, it sort of reframes back into the real life, the everyday, and all the tones and the colors get a lot darker because we know that Jinu is still sort of withholding that element of himself. And the thing about this movie is we look at Rumi's transition into being a more authentic version of herself and being vulnerable is like the end goal statically, but it is for real life purposes. It is like an ongoing thing that you have to really work at, because a lot of these patterns, and obviously in Rumi's case as well, it was indoctrinated since she was a child. Like, she was taught to mask since she was a child, with Celine pulling her sleeves down and asking her not to show her marks, and Rumi obviously asking all these questions as well about her heritage. I think that it's a really tough thing to do, because it can be ingrained so deeply into your person that you do believe it's who you are, instead of believing it's just that part of you.
Yeah, which I think she accepts at the end. And as you said, like in her thing, she came out, she showed everyone who she was, and in that story, case closed, everything was all good and happy. Whereas, like, I think in reality, more so, it's a constant thing you have to work on, and something that you can't just say tell someone your issue and then everything's fixed. It's something that like will still need to be worked on and looked at. But I think this is it's a good first step, like a good push into the first step you need to take watching this movie, because you sort of see it and you're like, okay, so the first thing I need to do is this to start healing.
Yeah, is open up. But like, you could say it in this corny way. You could say like K-pop Demon Hunters isn't just about slaying demons. It's about slaying the fear that you have to be perfect to be loved, because obviously everybody's made mistakes, and the film becomes a voice for people that sort of crave that authenticity. And it's all about the fact that growth isn't shedding your past, but owning the choices and letting people love you and being motivated by that growth and seeing it not as a weakness, but seeing it as making you who you are. Like, strength isn't hiding your flaws, it's loving yourself anyway through that. So very powerful.
It could almost be saying slaying the demons inside.
Yeah. And you know what? I can see this a lot around me in the world, just like even on social media and even in our friendship group, because you can see fundamentally a rise in like nerd culture all around. Whereas I don't know what your high school experience was, or what any sort of people listening to high school experience was, but liking the things that we're literally talking about on this podcast now, sometimes wasn't the popular thing, and it could get you in a lot of like social strife, social suicide, as some people say. Because I
Yep.
think the fact that nerd culture is rising in popularity is a lot of people in the world are saying, stuff what everybody else thinks. I love this, and my voice is going to be heard, just like Rumi's voice is heard at the end of the movie. And I think that's a really proud place for us to be. I know that lots of people have lots of places to go in terms of their own personal journey, but even that small little thing where people are like reclaiming the things that they love and sharing them openly is a really big step in doing this and improving how you feel about yourself as well.
Yeah, and I think 2000, it's as bad as, like I'm going to say, as bad as the world has been lately, especially last year and even into this year. Like some of the best things that come out of like that have come out lately have been of like last year. Like you look at K-pop Demon Hunters and its message, Superman, the new Superman and its message.
Yeah.
Like so many inspiring and just thoughtful movies have been coming out lately. I think that more people need to like make sure that they see and look and take in the messages and sort of transfer those messages into their own daily lives. Because at the moment, I think the world's a bit hurt and needs a bit
Yeah.
of healing.
Yeah, and I think, as we've said before on this podcast, culturally, movies fill that space where people need something universally, whether it be an escape or an answer or something to look up to or something to look forward to. And I think you're right. 2025 delivered a lot of movies in that vein, especially like this one, K-pop Demon Hunters, does a lot for shrinking shame and showing safe connection with friends and trusted connection. It also talks about belonging and how it doesn't occur when it's perfection based. You don't have to be perfect to belong to a friend group. In fact, sometimes people's flaws make them like the best version of themselves. And it also helps people grow, because you've seen all of the memes or all of the videos about how broken things are often beautiful as well. I think there's actually a Japanese art form where they take broken pieces and filigree them
Yep.
with
Gold.
gold. And that's literally showing that there is still beauty in the mistakes that you make, or there's still beauty in the broken, so to speak.
Because that's been going around for a bit. From what's his name from King of the Hill, the son.
But yeah,
Yeah, because he's like, because I think him and his dad were picking out pumpkins, and he picks the sort of malformed sort of pumpkin, and he's like, oh, why do you want that one instead of this one? And he's like, tells him, I can't remember what the word is, but it's word, and he's like, you can't just make up words. He's like, I didn't make it up. It means to see the beauty in imperfection. It's
yeah,
an art form where they piece the piece back together and use the gold fill to patch things up, and it shows the beauty even though it's imperfect.
yeah.
So, yeah, even King of the Hill, even King teaches lessons.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Stories can teach us lots of different lessons. And I think, this one fights back hard against, K-pop Demon Hunters fights. Bobby, that's right, yeah. K-pop
Yeah.
Demon Hunters fights back hard against those messages where if they knew the real me, they'd leave. If I have to earn love by being perfect and my past disqualifies me from any kind of love as well. It also fights that core value that some people had, that you are unlovable, because Rumi goes through all those kinds of emotions where she feels like she can't be loved for her authentic self. So I think that K-pop Demon Hunters was definitely a hit of 2025, and you could rewatch this movie or even look at just the friendship dynamic itself and take a whole another 40-minute episode exactly on that, just analyzing and breaking down the friendship dynamics in this. There's so many different layers to K-pop Demon Hunters, and I think the makers of this did a fantastic job of putting it all together. Final thoughts, Brash?
Wabi Sabi.
Is that what it's called?
Yep. So Wabi Sabi, celebrating the imperfect.
Very good. Awesome. That has been our episode on K-pop Demon Hunters. We want to thank you so much for joining us. Usually this is the time where Brash and I would rate it and put it on our Fandom Portals honor board. But what we're doing this year is we're going to bank up a group of movies. And then at the end of that banking up, we're going to actually release an episode where we talk about those movies and rate them and rank them and put them on our Fandom Portals honor board as like a different way to categorize the things that we watch. So if you wanted to be a part of that, or if you wanted to vote in some of the polls that are coming in terms of our Fandom Portals Honor Board, or if you wanted to send a voice memo to us and we'll play it on the podcast and we'll react to it in our Fandom Pulse segment, then you can do that by joining our Discord, which is in the show notes below. You can also DM us on Instagram and Threads. And remember, if you know somebody who you think would absolutely love K-pop Demon Hunters, whether they love K-pop music, whether they love themes of friendship, or whether they are a person who enjoys just taking more from movies than what was intended, then definitely show them our podcast, show them our YouTube, follow and subscribe, guys. It helps us out a really big deal.
Also, too, make sure not just to give it to you, show your friends who like this kind of stuff. Make sure you try and show your friends who don't usually watch this kind of stuff, and just try and say, just look, sit down and watch it, and just try and take it in. And I know I've shown it to people who usually don't kind of watch this kind of stuff, and they end up loving it.
Absolutely true. Because I was that person, and Kalia tried her hardest to get me to watch it, and then I finally did, and look, now I'm making a podcast episode about it. So this could be you. This could be you. So, and also, Brash, you've done it to me lots of times as well, because part of the reason you've been put on this show as my co-host was because I needed to expand my film viewing horizons, and you've done that for me. So thank you. It's taught me more. My brain has grown. It's been a great journey.
It's wonderful.
All right. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep loving fandoms, everybody. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.